Experience the life-changing benefits of automated insulin delivery with the T-Slim X2 insulin pump from Tandem Diabetes Care. Snack while you meal prep, doze off on the couch, wear it fashionably or discreetly. You can do it all with the #1 rated automated insulin delivery system according to a DQ&A patient panel. Get started at tandemdiabetes.com. RX only, indicated for patients with type 1 diabetes 6 years and older. Warning, Control-IQ technology should not be used by people under age 6 or who use less than 10 units of insulin per day or who weigh less than 55 pounds. Safety info available at tandemdiabetes.com/safety-info.
You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Welcome back to the Climate Conversations. I'm your host, Julie Yoo. Today, we are shining a spotlight on the surge of wild boar sightings in our urban jungle. A stark reminder that cities aren't just concrete and steel. They're home to a diverse range of creatures. We're talking about otters, monkeys, and yes, wild boars at our bus stops and nature parks. So how can we better coexist? Is it even possible to have a beneficial, even harmonious relationship with them? For more on the fascinating realm of urban wildlife, we are joined by Anbarasi Boopal, the co-CEO of the Animal Concerns Research and Education Society, or ACRES. Ambu, thank you so much for joining me on the Climate Conversation. So great to see you.
Thank you very much, too, for the opportunity, and it's great to be here.
Let's address the elephant, more of a boar in the room. Wild boar sightings are on the rise in Singapore. I wonder, have you ever had a personal encounter with one?
Definitely, as working at Acres, I've had some encounters with cases where people call us for a wild boar who has entered their property. I attended to a case for a wild boar who has entered a factory property somewhere in the west, and all the people were scared. And the pig was a medium-sized pig, not a very big adult pig, and there were police officers there. And we had to guide the pig out, and it's not so easy as said, right? So the pig was really scared, panicked, and running everywhere because their sense of vision is very poor. So they don't know where they are running towards, particularly when they panic. So we had to break a part of the fence and lead the pig outside the premises.
So no one got hurt?
Yeah, no one got hurt.
Actually, my brief encounter with one of them was at a golf course a few months back. And I still remember being taken aback by how big and imposing it was. But it was quite shy, minding its own business. But the mess it left, it was quite a digger, I must say. Could you tell us more about their characteristics or, their behavior?
So yes, wild boars are amazing diggers. They are generally shy, so they avoid people. They don't like to be seen because they are prey animals. So it's not advantageous for them to be completely visible out there. But if they are provoked or cornered or they feel threatened, for example, then they will have to be defensive. They're more active later at nighttime, before sunset, and also earlier in the mornings. They usually sleep and rest during the daytime, and they feed on a variety of things. So one of the things they do is uproot vegetation, and they eat a lot of tuberous vegetables, plant matter. So that's why they uproot. They eat the grubs and small invertebrates that they find under the soil. So they are quite versatile in their food. They eat almost most of the things that they can find. So they survive better. And they're also social animals within their group. So they have their babies, they take care of them. They are very protective of their family. So when they feel threatened, they will defend their young ones.
I think the one I saw was a male, probably during a mating season, sort of venturing alone, searching for love. I don't know. Is that how they...
Looking pretty handsome, powerful. Yeah, so they do explore different territories. So the males would be more territorial. And of course, they are bigger and more powerful in that sense. So when they charge, 100-kilo animal charging at someone is no joke. That's when things can go wrong.
Absolutely, Ambu. And they seem to have a knack for adventure these days. What do you make of the extraordinary sightings that, we keep on hearing about in urban areas? And would you say they're feeling a bit more comfortable in the city, perhaps losing their fear of human beings?
I think it's very interesting and important to see the trends that's been happening. One thing is that there has been a lot of habitat loss for wild boars. So yes, they don't have their predators, unlike other countries where they have big cats who feed on them. But here in Singapore, we don't have such predators. Sometimes maybe pythons can take small piglets. And I think in Singapore, one of the biggest threats that biodiversity faces is a fragmentation of habitats where they lose the connectivity. So there are green spaces, but in order for them to explore from one pocket to another green pocket, they need to take the risk of crossing man-made barriers like
I
the roads,
see.
expressways, HDB units. And some of the encounters that we have observed are really adjacent to their natural habitat. So we have had a lot of residential estates built very close to their habitat. So we have brought people close to nature, brought nature closer to people. And there are also certain parks like the Bukit Panjang where the nature park is just there. And we have noticed pigs who come to the void decks because they are attracted to the food waste that's left by people. So it also boils down a lot to the human behavior and the etiquette that we unknowingly practice or not practice, and it draws the wildlife closer to us. So once they realize that there's food, tasty, salty, not so healthy food from the trash bins, they will continue to come back. And they are just focused on the food and they return back into the forested area after that. I think that is when things can go wrong and a conflict can happen.
Yeah, it's not always a good thing to bump into a boar, especially as you mentioned, when they feel threatened. In the case of what we saw at Pulau Ubin, where it attacked and snatched food from visitors, it's not a normal occurrence, right?
In Ubin, I think you raised a very important point because the pigs who are on the mainland at certain sites behave very differently and respond to people's presence differently compared to Ubin, where there's a lot of floating population. The visitors who come, they are not the same people every day. So the behavior of these people could be very different compared to a resident who's living at an estate. So they are used to seeing people. There have been many incidents in Ubin where people were feeding pigs and they have open access to food where they're carrying snacks and all that in front of them. So once the pigs learn, and the monkeys as well, when they learn, they will try their luck in getting the food. Their sense of smell is really good. So they will go and try their luck to take the food out. And there's been even videos that I've watched of pigs being scratched and petted by people. And the pig is enjoying. So I think all this gives a very bad information to people that you can go and pet a wild boar like that.
So with their increasing presence in urban areas, what sort of potential impact can they have on the ecosystem and also the urban environment?
I think in Singapore's context, one of the biggest concern that agencies and people would have is the public safety. And it comes as a challenge because we are trying to do things in Singapore where we want to green the city. There's been greening efforts for many years and we have rich biodiversity in a small space. There's been so much development. So we are in this unique place where we want to be a city in nature, but it comes with these risks as well. One of the things for larger animals like wild boars is becoming a roadkill. Wild boars and pangolins even, the biggest threat they face there is actually becoming a roadkill. And if we look at the challenges or concerns for people, would be really the public safety. And if we look at the conservation point of view, the threat is mainly inside forests where if the population increases, they are known to eat or feed on saplings and may slow down the recovery regeneration of the forest. So that is for within forests like Central Catchment Nature Reserve.
So understanding these challenges, how are wild boars managed in Singapore? What sort of measures are in place to address their presence?
So a lot of times wildlife management starts with at the animals level.
Okay.
I hope that we can move forward from there because the way that they are managed currently includes, say, exclusion measures like we put up fencing. There are also habitat modification that's done where NParks actually removes the oil palm vegetation wherever they are sited. And there's also educational efforts. We have a joint campaign with NParks, the zoo, and other wildlife groups called Our Wild Neighbours. So to raise awareness amongst public on what to do, what not to do. And of course, there's culling. So they are also trapped, captured, and euthanized by the agencies. So we do come across incidents and accidents where, people get injured, the wild boar gets run over and gets killed. So I think we have to look at other measures, look upstream ahead instead of now where we are looking at some level of prevention and some reactive measures.
What would that be?
At the planning level, we have to provide safe corridors for wildlife to use so you can minimize or manage human-wildlife interactions to some extent. And the next level is if we need to really manage the wild boar population, I really hope that we look into humane measures like a combination of fertility control. And the next thing we have to do all over Singapore is really change the way that food waste is managed. I think we have to look at making all the bins wildlife proof, not just for wild boars, but also for macaques. and to change human behavior on the way that we dispose food waste. So there's a huge role that's to be played by the residents, by people like us. So that is usually not emphasized. When people call and complain saying, oh, there's a wild boar, they're expecting the government agency to do something like go and remove the pig or cull the pig. They expect the action to be at the animal level. Now, a lot of ethical wildlife principles focus on human level, human behavior first.
Hello everyone, my name is Crispina,
And I'm Adrian.
and we're the hosts of a podcast called Work It.
If you've never heard of it, well, it's a good time to tap in.
In the last 20 episodes, we've discussed topics like how to negotiate for a salary increase,
Or how to get along with younger colleagues who have different values from you, which incidentally is our top performing episode.
if work consumes your life and you want some perspective on issues like management, stress, even office romance, then this podcast should be on your list. A new episode drops every Monday.
Catch us on the CNA app or wherever you get your podcast.
Speaking of populations, I understand calculating the exact number is quite challenging, but how do we determine if the wild boar population is becoming too big? And what is too big for a dense urban landscape like Singapore?
So this is a question that we don't have the answer for, and it's a very important question as well. But there are other ways that we can look at it. There has been some comparisons done between the population of wild boars in our central catchment with a similar forest type in Malaysia, and they concluded that our population density is pretty high. But there were also arguments that we cannot compare it straight away. And the other way to also tell within a forest is the amount of damage that you witness within the forested area, like the saplings, tree saplings uprooted, and the number of nests made, and certain observations like that. So in the other parts, like the city areas, residential estates where we actually sight wild boars, it's very difficult to tell when is it, how many pigs is enough and how many wild boars is too much. So I think we will have to preempt. I think we are at a stage where we can safely say that we have to manage the wild boar population, but in a more humane way and a more preemptive way. So, for example, if I were to buy a flat at Tengah, am I being told that you will encounter these animals? And so am I being prepared that if I sight a monitor lizard at a pond outside my HDB, I don't have to call anyone. Just let the monitor lizard be. So that kind of preparation needs to be done, the awareness, education, and tolerance towards wild animals, and management of food waste as well. That needs to be done. And then that can actually help to bring down the population.
Oh, interesting. Abu, you earlier mentioned how the community is reacting to wild boar conflicts, their expectations, how they call you. But as a wildlife enthusiast and advocate, it must be quite a, emotional roller coaster or challenge to sort of navigate those expectations when these conflicts arise. How do you feel to be involved in helping people to deal with these conflicts and finding peaceful resolutions? How challenging is it?
We do ask this question to ourselves.
Every day?
Yeah, every day. So when people call us and say that, can you get rid of an animal, whether it's a snake or a wild boar or a monkey, we try to see it as an opportunity. So we get about 1,700 calls a month.
That's a lot.
The hotline is really hot. So that's about 60 to 70 calls a day. And we see that as not 1,700 people complaining about animals, but 1,700 opportunities to speak about animals to people who may not be empowered with knowledge. So our rescue officers and volunteers, they really talk to people, explain to people. Sometimes certain cases we may have to go down and do a site visit. And also majority of our callers are calling us to help the animal. So that's a beautiful part about wildlife management, because a lot of times the complaints that agencies receive are from a small, I would say a little bit of a minority, where they might not be aware of what to do, or they are coming across the animal for the first time, they are in shock, and they did not expect this to happen in Singapore. But sometimes we do have some cases where people complain about chickens being very loud, or the koals, the birds singing.
We all know.
That's where we draw the line. I think there are some we might not be able to change, which is fine, I guess. We focus on what we can do. There will be some people who would definitely not be tolerant towards animals. I guess we have to accept that part.
What would you say is the most common misconceptions that people call you about or ask you about that you'd like them to know?
A lot of times people assume that these animals are very rare to see and they don't belong here. So it's important for us to break that pattern, to tell people that, hey, we have greened this city very beautifully. So we have attracted them towards us, to where we live. So if we want to live close to nature, nature comes in all forms, shapes, sounds and colors.
Yes.
So we have to learn to accept. You don't have to love every animal, but there are ways that you can coexist. So that's something that we want everyone to learn. You know, we use an escalator. It comes with its own risks, but we all learn how to use, stand behind the yellow line, hold the handrail, everything. That is exactly what we need to do with wildlife as well, that we need to learn how to coexist. A lot of times people think animal management should be done by the agency or an NGO. I don't have a role to play. That is something I would like to emphasize to people who want to play a part in coexistence.
And I understand this problem is not only unique to Singapore. Wild boar populations are also expanding across Europe, especially in Berlin, Madrid, Warsaw. How are other cities sort of dealing with this issue, and any lessons or good practices that you can consider managing human-wildlife interactions?
Definitely. I think you're right that many countries face severe, intense human-wildlife conflict situations, not just with wild boars, even there are leopards in the city that can kill people, that kind of conflict situations. And also in other countries, there's a lot of agricultural crop damage that's caused by animals like wild boars or deers. So there's actual economical damage that's caused as well. So the way that they handle could be slightly different compared to how we handle here in Singapore, because here the public safety comes first, because we're putting people and animals very close to each other. But there has been some interesting lessons. One of the things is that traditionally they've been managed by culling. There's also hunting allowed in certain places. And definitely if the problem continues to persist, that means it's not working.
It's not effective.
Yes, it's not. Because the root causes often are not addressed, which is the pigs continue to have access to the farms. They eat, they breed more, then the population goes up, then you cull, but still the access part is not resolved. The same goes for Singapore as well. They still have access to food. So recently there's been some work, very good work done on humane measures, which is fertility control. So we are hoping that Singapore would follow suit to try that, just so that we treat the animals in our community in a more humane way. We have done it with the stray dogs. So we can do better also with other groups of animals, with macaques. So we can do it for wild boars, hopefully. Wild boars are usually, I would say, really kind of the underdogs in the animal world. I think the perception from fear and the fact that they are not endangered and all that really puts them in a difficult situation. So I hope that it can move towards non-culling, but more on either sterilization or other methods of fertility control.
Yeah. So beyond wild boars, any other wildlife animals that are sort of increasingly infiltrating into human spaces in Singapore that you're looking out for?
Yes, we are. Our greenery has been drawing more animals like civets and otters. So common palm civets, otherwise called musang, they are very cute little, people often call them as raccoons. But yeah, we don't have raccoons.
We don't have raccoons.
We don't have. These are civets who are found in this part of the Asia. And these civets are native to Singapore. They're very cute nocturnal mammals with long tail. And they are not after, trash bins and stuff. They just need sheltered spaces to nest at night.
Okay.
But because they are active at night, they run around and party at night on the roof ceiling. And that's when people's sleeps get disturbed. Yeah. They have managed to explore places with gardens with fruiting trees, parks and areas where there's enough vegetation. They really love landed properties because of the attic space that the roof has.
I see.
So that's one group of animals. And of course, the very famous otters who don't know the difference between the expensive koi and the regular longkang fish. So they do get into a lot of trouble because they're exploring new pockets, and people also adore them. At the same time, there could be conflict situations because people get too close for comfort.
So do remind us before I let you go how to responsibly interact with wild boars or other wildlife species, and what are some of the tips for safely sharing our urban habitat with them?
Okay, there are 3 golden rules. Number one, before we go to the golden rules, is that sometimes no interaction is the best interaction. So that brings you to the first rule, which is appreciate them from a distance. So we don't want people to be phobic. So we use the word appreciate, right? So you don't have to hate them, but just, it's okay. You can tolerate. I mean, we live with people around or work. That's why we use our wild neighbors. Like we might not even get along with our neighbors, but we learn of ways to tolerate and coexist. Same thing, so appreciate from a distance. And distance can mean several meters for some animals like otters.
Okay.
And if they have babies young, increase the distance, because just like you and I, we have to defend our family or children, they will be extra protective about when they have young around them. Number two is to not feed. So a lot of people think feeding them is intentionally feeding, but also we have to remember there's food waste that we generate. So we have to make sure our food waste is properly binned. And number three is no flash photography. I definitely don't like people using flash on my face. It's like it can really trigger a defensive response from the animals as well. And the last bit is if people want to learn more about our wildlife in Singapore, particularly the urban wildlife, visit the website, the joint campaign, which is ourwildneighbours.sg. So it has fantastic information on different groups of animals. So even if someone has an issue with, my koi fish is being eaten by monitor lizards and otters, there are technical specifications on how to exclude your pond from. So all this information is up there. So I just hope that, more people, when they hear all these tips, will be able to just equip yourself with the wildlife etiquette tips.
Ambu, thank you so much for your time, your insight and expertise on respecting and coexisting with the magnificent wildlife that calls our city home. Thank you.
Thank you so much too.
Well, thanks to my guest, Ambu, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Do remember to subscribe and like this podcast so you know when a new episode drops. You can find CNA's climate and sustainability coverage online at cna.asia. The team behind this podcast is Joanne Chen, Cyan Win, Jacqueline Chan, and Crispina Robert. And I'm Julie Yoo, signing off.
Evolving education for a changing world. Expand your career opportunities and earn an MBA from University of Cincinnati Online Lindner College of Business. Designed for busy professionals, UC Online MBA is flexible, personalized, and supports students from application all the way through graduation. Get the world-class degree you deserve without sacrificing work or family commitments. Apply now at online.uc.edu/MBA.